It's been 6 years since talents were first introduced to the pool of rare gacha units, and Ponos still hasn't added talents to one particular unit who's been here from the start. It's time that Catellite got some talents. Catellite is one of the later rare cats added to the game. He is a specialized alien meat shield with a strong ability. Now, strong isn't really the most optimal ability a specialized meat shield can have, as it only reduces the damage to 0.4 times instead of the 0.2 times of resistant. Luckily, Catellite has one knockback, which is optimal for a meat shield as it gives him maximum bulk. With the strong ability, Catellite is able to do some decent damage to alien enemies as the ability buffs his attack by 1.5 times against aliens. This is rather negligible, however, as most people won't use meat shields for their damage output. There's some speculation on why Ponos decided to give strong instead of resistant, and it mainly comes down to the rather infamous Ramen Cat. Ramen has great base stats, good cost and cooldown for a specialized meat shield, and the amazing ability of resistant. All of those combined created a monster that dominates every single angel stage, which then Ponos tried to balance by adding stronger angel enemies, which then completely shifted the meta of angel enemies as a whole. Ponos probably doesn't want to make the same mistake again, but instead of nerfing the base stats of their next creation, they quote-unquote nerf the ability by giving strong instead of resistant. Personally, I'm glad they did that, since it adds some variety to the player's arsenal of specialized meat shields. Don't forget guys, meat shields are one of the most important cats in a certain meta for an enemy trait. Changing the trait's meat shield will completely change how players approach that trait as a whole. Just imagine how different the game would be if Ramen had resist against alien instead of angel. Strong-based meat shields are notorious for being absolutely trash. And by that I mean strong ability-based, offensive-oriented, specialized melee meat shield attackers, similar to Catellite. Cats like Camera and Calligraphy don't count as they are more like stackable attackers that sometimes function as ranged meat shields. Just look at the Dark, Low Dark, Manic Dark, Brainwash Dark, to be honest they're mostly Dark variants, Maximum the Fighter, and Ninja Cat, before talents saved him. These cats have stats adjusted to be slightly offensive oriented, and their 3 knockbacks makes them terrible meat shields. Catellite, however, and also Cactus, have only 1 knockback, which makes their endurance acceptable as a specialized meat shield. They're actually quite good. They can also do quite some damage, but because meat shields die so quickly, it's hardly noticeable. Something else to note about strong-based meat shields is their base stats will generally be slightly higher to compensate for their lesser ability. However, what I would like to do is, by adding talents to Catellite, I can finally make him a viable melee offensive meat shield that justifies him having the strong ability. Since the only relevant raw stat of a meat shield is health, I don't want the strong ability to be only used as a nerf for their effective health against their target. This time, when we are balancing the unit, we are balancing it based on the original intent of their ability and design. I want Catellite to be an actual strong meat shield, one that is viable for both offense and defense against their target trait as a supplementary meat shield. First of all, let's take a look at Catellite's stats. I'm gonna base it off of level 50 stats, since rare cats are easy to obtain and most people have used Cat's Eyes, got plus levels, or both on Catellite. Most 4-star restriction lineups and challenge runs feature level 50 rare cats anyways, so yeah. At level 50, Catellite has 21.6k health, which is already acceptable for the standards of our current meta. He also has quite high damage, coming in at 8.7k and around 2.9k DPS. This is quite insane for a low cooldown meat shield with a cost of 270, until we realize that he has single target. Then most people forget about his damage. However, against aliens, this number jumps up to a whopping 4.3k DPS. Single target still, unfortunately, and it's still not high enough to actually be noticeable in battle. Why is that? Because if you look closely, you normally would only get one Catellite attacking an enemy at any given time, as he is a meat shield. This is because meat shields usually don't survive for long, and you probably only have one meat shield holding up the front line at any given time, so only one of them is attacking. Unless your target is like a boss that has low attack frequency, you would still get about 4.3k single target DPS even if you sent 20 Catelites in a row. Also, and this is really important, we cannot buff the survivability of this unit without making compromises to his meat shielding capability. For example, adding knockbacks or range would all hinder Catellite's performance as a meat shield. Therefore, we need to buff his damage to an acceptable level that is noticeable enough to be worth using as a damage source. There is a slight problem with that, however. Giving Catellite too much damage might end up making him similar to Cameraman's situation. Cameraman has such good damage and survivability that she's used even outside of floating. I don't want to do that with Catellite, as Cameraman is a meta-shattering unit, and doing the same for Catellite would probably break the balance of the game. I do want to make Catellite extremely good though, maybe approaching the level of Camera and Ramen. However, the purpose of these videos is to design and engineer a unit that can actually fit well into the game and make it better. So instead of giving Catellite too much damage, my solution is to introduce another incentive to use a unit, and I'll tell you what that is in just a second. Finally, what I often enjoy doing for rebalanced units is to add a cherry on top, something that makes the unit special in itself when compared to other units, or something that has the power to even rebalance certain stages or enemies in the game. Now, before you start typing that comment, I assure you that nothing has been trivialized by the addition of these talents, and stages remain roughly the same. These changes simply provide players a new and fun way to approach certain enemies that might have been previously very annoying to fight. Some of these enemies are some of the most hated in the entire Battle Cats community, and many others are just what I find to be unnecessarily annoying to fight. Okay, so what are the talents that I have implemented? The basic attack up and defense up 20% upgrades are standard for every unit, so I won't be going over that. We need to come up with a solution to his damage. The single target is holding him down, and his damage still isn't high enough to be noticeable. After considering a couple choices, I found the almost perfect solution of giving him a wave attack. Level 1 wave attack to be specific. First of all, the wave attack effectively doubles his DPS for non-wave immune enemies and solves the single target problem. Now, with 1 or 2 Cattellites attacking at the front line, the damage is just high enough to make a difference in battle. It is not a wise idea to grant anything higher than a level 1 wave, as the damage pierce from the additional levels would be much too powerful. A level 1 wave attack has just enough pierce to hit enemies that are just out of range for melee units that are blocked by tough peons like Cyberhorn or Nimoy Boar. That also means only tanky frontliner enemies would receive his full damage, as even though Catellite has wave attacks, he still has single target. You can't simply label it an area attack and multiply the damage by 2. There are certain conditions you have to factor in. Are there swarms of peons? Then it's only 1 times damage. If you're hitting something tanky like Bonbon Symbiote, Elder Sloth, or Starpang for example, then you can actually call it 2 times damage. This talent already makes Catellite a much better unit, but we can go further and somehow make him even better by adding one of the most trashed on abilities by the Battle Cats community. Everyone says it's trash, everyone says it's too niche, everyone says it's useless or doesn't make much difference, and that ability is Curse. There's a reason why people ignore this ability quite often. Only a few of the units with Curse were actually implemented correctly and are actually viable. Ghastly is an infamous example, but even then some people ignore it. One of the main reasons units like Boomerang or Brainwashed Lion fail is because of uptime. Now, I'm not only talking about the ability uptime in of itself, I'm also referring to how viable it is for the player to maintain that uptime, adding in factors like unit survivability, cooldown, and attack accuracy. Boomerang has great uptime, but he has bad mobility and low survivability. Brainwashed Lion has low ability duration and bad trait targeting. Brainwashed Dark and Brainwashed Island's Curse are a lot better, but the ability uptime is low, and if the unit dies fast, you won't be able to make much use of the ability before it runs out. So why do I want to add Curse to Catellite? Every trait has their own gimmick, Relic being Curse, Aku being Shield, Zombies being able to burrow and revive, and so on. When aliens were first introduced, their main gimmick was having abilities. Back then, only your own units could use abilities, and enemies with abilities were a rather new thing. That is why the vast majority of alien enemies you encounter have some sort of ability they can use, the most common of them being Warp by almost every starred alien. Now, most of these abilities are only just minor inconveniences. Some of them you can't even disable, like Ursa Major's Strengthen and Elizabeth's Wave Attack, but having a unit that can cancel out the majority of these abilities is way more useful than you may think at first. There are a surprising number of alien enemies with extremely annoying debuffs, mainly Calamari and Klee 1. which both have a 90% weaken on your units. These two are backliner enemies with area attack that often debuffs your entire team down to just a tenth of their attack power, making them extremely annoying to fight. But hold up, you may say, if they are backliners, then how is Catellite supposed to reach them? Well, Catellite isn't meant to directly counter them. Have you ever fought a stage and after clearing out all the enemies, you were left with just a single super buffed Cle 1? They are extremely buffed around late SOL to UL, around 1600% to around 2000%, with almost 2 million health. Add on top of that a 20% chance for a weaken that reduces your attack power to 10%, and there are starred SOL and UL stages. It just becomes tedious at that point. Catellite's curse can certainly help in these scenarios, but that's not it. To expand the usage of curse, I also added a target angel talent. There are many angel enemies with annoying abilities. Let's look at the most infamous example of them all, Winged Piege. Funny how all of these annoying abilities happen to be a 90% weaken. Rapid Omni Strikes with a 100% chance to weaken all cats to 10%? Yeah, now do you guys understand why I added these talents? This is a big redemption for Catellite here, a melee attacker with a curse that's actually useful. There are numerous angel enemies with annoying abilities. Chick-fil-A's Freeze is a common one, along with Sleipnir's Knockback. Some newly added angel enemies have dangerous abilities as well. Tarsiriel, the Angel Lemur, has an annoying slow but sadly is a sage, so Catellite can't do that much. Lutrine Gokurako, the Angel Otter, has a knockback ability with extremely high pushing power, which Catellite, when paired with Ramen together, can negate effectively. The beauty of it all is that miraculously, Ramen does not outclass Catellite at all. This is because their fundamental roles have changed. Ramen is a pure meat shield, whereas Catellite is now a melee attacker. Catellite can curse the Otter, which lets Ramen do its job more effectively. The Wave Attack talent allows it to apply the ability consistently. We have created unit synergy. There are tons more applications of this in other areas too. In the case with Wing Piege, it allows more mid-ranged units to work properly against it without having to worry about it being weakened. If you have cats like Mushroom or Courier, or Elemental Duelist with the Angel talent for example, it can certainly help when you're fighting Wing Piege. Often you wouldn't know what enemies are in a stage, and it can take you by surprise. If you have lower ranged units like these, you can still use them against Wing Piege or other enemies that Catellite can disable. It's a shame Boomerang can't be used for this, as he does not have the tankiness or the range to keep him against Wing Piege. Those are the 5 talents. They're meant to improve and give people a reason to use Catellite, while adding a flair of uniqueness onto him at the same time. Due to how talents synergize together, Catellite is now effective as both a meat shield and a melee attacker. So I know you all are waiting for this, and it's finally time to move on to the unit review. Catellite, a very old cat of the standard set of Rare Gacha units, who still somehow has not gotten talents after 6 years. Catellite is designed to be an anti-alien meat shield. However, he has strong instead of resistant. This is very similar to Cactus Cat, who almost got outclassed by Cone Cat if not for his Surge Immune ability. Cats with Strong have a 1.8 times damage multiplier against their target and receive only 0.4 times damage, including treasures. Meat shields aren't exactly known for their offense, which is why I find it strange that Ponos decided to give Catellite a strong ability instead of resistant. Many other melee spammable attacker meat shields with the strong ability have failed due to their low survivability from the lack of range or low health. The Dark Cat variants are probably the most well-known examples of this. These cats try to be both meat shields and melee attackers, which they end up failing in both categories. Maximum the Fighter has amazing health but 3 knockbacks, which severely hinders his endurance. Lack of endurance as a melee unit makes it very difficult to land hits or function as a meat shield. Catellite is different however, as Catellite only has one knockback, making his endurance quite good. He is known for being a capable anti-alien meat shield, but why put his strong ability to waste by only making use of his health? This is where talents come in to fix up Catellite and make him a truly viable spammable melee attacker. Catellite receives level 1 wave attack talent with a 100% chance to trigger, a curse talent that lasts for 5 seconds with an activation chance of 50%, and finally a target angel talent, along with the usual stat talents, health up and attack up. Here are Catellite's full stats with max talents unlocked. There are two major things that hold Catellite back from being viable as a melee attacker. First is lack of an area attack. Now this isn't usually a huge problem for spammable melee units, but Catellite in particular has a rather long force swing compared to other cats with the same function. Another thing is that although Catellite has 2.8k DPS, he is a full-on meat shield. Usually you'd only get a maximum of 1 or 2 Cattellites attacking an enemy at any given time, since meat shields die rather quickly. It's not enough to make a difference for people to actually use him as an attacker, but a problem arises if we buff his damage to an acceptable level. If 1 or 2 Catellites attacking results in substantial damage, that would be too much, as Catellite is extremely spammable. He can easily overrun stages with slow attacking bosses with such high damage. Therefore, the incentive to use him as a melee unit should not rely solely on Catellite's damage. So what's a great ability to boost his damage without being too broken? A level 1 wave attack does a perfect job. It effectively gives him an area attack while also adding loads more damage. An important distinction here is, just like Slimecat's wave attack, this wave attack does not double Catellite's damage. This is because Slimecat has a single target attack, just like Catellite, so the double damage would only apply to the initial target of the attack, whereas everyone else receives regular damage. This means that if you're fighting a tanky pusher like Boar variants or One-Horn variants, Catellite will do double damage to them and everything behind it will be hit once by a piercing wave attack. This talent significantly improves Catellite's offensive capability and is a great buy. If you want to purchase this talent, it costs 5 MP per level from level 1 to 5 and costs 10 MP per level from level 6 to 10. Each level increases the chance of a wave attack by 10% all the way to 100%. Our second talent provides yet another incentive. Catellite gains a 50% chance to curse for 5 seconds upon max upgrade. If you want to purchase this talent, it costs 5 MP per level from level 1 to 5 and costs 10 MP per level from level 6 to 10. Each level increases the chance of curse by 5% all the way to 50%. Curse is an underrated and underused ability, probably because we don't have many accessible non-Uber units that do the job well. Boomerang, Brainwashed Lion, and Brainwashed Bird are all mediocre. Brainwashed Island is good, but not many zombies make use of abilities. Esoteric Ural is probably the best of the bunch, with a good trade target of relic enemies. He is able to prevent relics from cursing your own units, which can be very helpful in certain situations. The reason why Curse is such a good ability on Catellite is because aliens are known for their various debuffs. Most notably are Cle1 and Calamari's weakens that reduce your cat's attack power to a measly 10%. The majority of starred aliens can warp your units, rendering some tanky meat shields like Manic Eraser to lose a lot of its value whilst fighting enemies like Starpang or Mesocosmocyclone. Melee units like Fishman or Balrog can easily get warped and would have to wait a few seconds before returning to the front line to attack again, greatly reducing their chances to land hits. Tanker units like Dr. Heaven and Cat Machine would be rendered useless when tanking starred aliens, as they do not have the warp blocker ability. When Catellite curses these enemies, this no longer becomes a problem and all your cats can function normally. It isn't a huge game changer, but it can certainly be nice in certain scenarios, which is exactly what we're going for. Simply adding more incentive to use the unit. This talent isn't so special on its own, but it's how the next talent synergizes with this one that is truly a game changer. Our final talent for Catellite is Target Angel. It is a one-time purchase of 50 MP. OMG, outclassed by Ramen. No, let me explain first, please. Catellite and Ramen are now fundamentally different from each other. Angel is another trait with a huge amount of ability debuffs. There is probably a very famous enemy you can think of right away. Yes, it's an actual wing Peach counter. It doesn't shut down the enemy completely, but it makes it much more tolerable and provides players with a new strategy to deal with the enemy. Cursing Angel enemies is an extremely effective way of dealing with them, as lots of enemies use various debuffs against your cats. Numerous Angel enemies will have their core abilities taken away, most notably Lutrine Gokurako with its deadly pushing power coming from its KB ability, and Great Angel Chibanao with its annoying support status effects of weaken and slow. Other enemies like Sleipnir and Borafim will have their knockbacks disabled. Chick-fil-A's freeze can also be annoying at times. Kleinau's slow is also disabled, although it isn't a common enemy. Sunfish Jones' slow is rather irrelevant, but cursing him can help you with the cleanup phase. At least the annoying Mr. Angel will be cursed as well, so no more random weakens. Sad thing is, Catellite will now be the ultimate power creep for Papu, but that stage was easy anyways. Also, I just want to mention, Divine Archangel is not power crept. I have done extensive testing and Catellite's curse only helps slightly. I tried making a curse strat, but Catellite kept getting obliterated by the Cappies who just instantly kill him the moment anything gets warped by the boss. So yeah, there you go. Catellite is no longer a simple meat shield. Each Catellite can do an impressive 6.1k DPS to aliens and angels, with an even higher concentrated DPS against a single enemy. Along with this, the Curse ability adds to his effectiveness as a meat shield and a melee attacker, protecting your other units from various debuffs commonly found in alien and angel enemies. This does not shut down any major threats, rather it encourages even more unit synergy, as you can now use units on certain enemies you wouldn't be able to before. There are way too many examples to list. There are so many units you can now use on Wing Peach by simply cancelling his weaken ability. Lutrine Gokurako can be effectively stalled by using a combination of both Ramen and Catellite. Catellite won't be able to function as the primary angel meat shield however, as this trait was buffed way too much due to Ramen Cat being in the game. Still, he can provide some excellent support for your team and provide an extra layer of defense. This talent is definitely a must get. Hey, thanks for watching this far into the video. I just wanted to say, if you liked my video, maybe you can support me by clicking a certain red button? Only if you want to, of course. Anyways, let's move on to the conclusion. In summary, Catellite gets Wave Attack, Curse, and Target Angel from talents. All three are amazing talents. There's no bad/controversial talent because we are expanding the unit's niche and not directly improving the unit. These talents don't have much to do with his capability as a meat shield, but rather improves his performance as a melee attacker to a viable level. Wave Attack does not directly double his DPS due to his low range and single target, but it significantly improves his capability of dealing damage as it effectively gives him a piercing area attack. His Curse and Target Angel talents come together in one package to deliver a brand new unique strategy to deal with some of the more annoying debuff enemies. As for talent orbs, Strong against aliens will still be the best one. Strong against Angel is not that great since most angels have busted DPS because of Ramen, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Alternatively, you can use attack up or defense orbs too, I guess. Here's a talent priority list. All of the new talents are at a priority of 4 because Catellite already functions well as an alien meat shield. There's not really a need for improvement here, and these talents only make the unit better in other aspects if you like that playstyle. The stat talents are at a 2, as it is always better to boost rare cats first.